Billionaire finds Maid's daughter washing dishes at 3 a.m. The truth left him shocked. The clang of a falling metal tray echoed through the silent mansion like a cry in the night, sharp enough to rip through the stillness that wrapped the estate like a blanket. It was 3 a.m., a time when even the restless city outside remained quiet, and the moon dipped low behind the clouds like it, too, wanted to sleep. But inside the vast, marble-floored kitchen of the Raiden mansion, a small figure stood frozen, her hands submerged in cold, soapy water, tears mixing silently with the steam rising from the sink. She was trembling, exhausted, and thin enough that the oversized sweater she wore hung from her shoulders like it belonged to someone else. And in the doorway behind her, unnoticed until that moment, stood billionaire Adrian Raiden, the man whose rules allowed no staff inside the mansion after midnight. Yet here she was, a child, washing dishes, alone. Before diving into this emotional journey, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and humanity, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Touch of Kindness Stories. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts. Adrian took a slow step forward, confusion etched across his face. He had returned from a long overseas meeting only an hour ago and had gone to the kitchen to get water when he heard the noise. Now, staring at the girl, he tried to piece together who she was. Her name was Naira, the maid's daughter. He hadn't seen her often, only on the rare weekends when her mother couldn't leave her alone at home. But the Naira he remembered had soft cheeks and shy eyes. The girl before him looked different, older than her years, tired, as if life had pressed too much weight onto her small shoulders. The fluorescent kitchen lights revealed faint bruises near her elbows, scrapes on her knuckles, and a heaviness in her expression that should never belong to a child. The mansion itself felt shocked by her presence at this hour. The long counters, gleaming appliances, and spotless floors looked foreign against the image of a child standing in labor like she belonged to a different world. The sink was filled with greasy pans and plates from a midnight business dinner Adrian didn't even know his staff had served. The air smelled faintly of garlic, detergent, and something else, something like fear. When Naira finally turned and saw Adrian standing there, she jolted, stepping back so quickly that water splashed across the counter. She whispered a quick apology, her voice trembling, her eyes wide with something deeper than surprise. It was guilt, or maybe it was fear of punishment. Adrian didn't understand it yet, but he felt a tightness in his chest, in the hours that followed. The mansion slowly returned to its usual glow, sunlight creeping through tall glass windows, waking the world outside. But Adrian hardly slept. He couldn't push away the image of a child working secretly at 3 a.m. It unsettled him deeply. He had strict rules for a reason. He believed his staff deserved boundaries, rest, and respect. So why was a child doing dishes in secret? The question gnawed at him with every passing minute. The next morning, when Naira's mother, Samira, arrived for work, exhaustion dripped from her steps. Her eyes were red, and there was a limp in her gait, as though she had run through half the night just to reach her duties on time. She carried herself like someone carrying invisible burdens. Samira had always been polite but distant, never one to overshare, and always grateful for the job. Adrian watched her quietly from the hallway, noticing things he had never noticed before: her frayed shoes, her thinning wrists, how she placed her hands together whenever she spoke, as if constantly in apology. For the first time, he wondered about the people who worked for him beyond their job descriptions. By midday, Adrian had made a decision. He would learn the truth, as the sun hovered high, casting golden light across the marble floors and warming the large hallway. He called Samira to the living room. He spoke gently, trying to ease her tension, but her eyes flicked nervously toward the closed doors as though expecting terrible news. She apologized repeatedly, her voice cracking under the weight of fear. And then, when Adrian told her what he saw the night before, Samira collapsed into tears, not dramatic tears, but the kind that breaks silently after being held back for too long. Through slow, halting words, she revealed a truth Adrian never could have imagined. Naira had been working because she wanted to help her mother keep the job. Samira had been threatened by her landlord to pay overdue rent or be forced out within a week. Their electricity had been cut 2 nights ago. Naira couldn't sleep because mosquitoes swarmed the hot, dark apartment. So instead of lying awake in fear, she had decided to go with her mother to work, even though children weren't allowed. She had begged to help with the dishes because she thought it would make things easier for her mother and prevent her from being fired for not finishing everything in time. Yes, Samira explained. Adrian felt a weight in his stomach heavier than he expected. He had grown up wealthy, sheltered, and accustomed to seeing problems as solvable through money or strategy. But standing there now, watching a mother cry over things like electricity and basic shelter, he felt ignorant, detached. How many struggles had he missed simply because he never thought to look? But the truth had another layer, one that hollowed him out even more. Naira had bruises because she helped her mother clean houses outside the mansion on weekends, houses where owners didn't treat staff kindly. She lifted heavy buckets, carried laundry, scrubbed floors for hours. She was only 12, yet she worked more than most adults. She didn't complain. She didn't ask for toys. She only wanted to keep her mother safe and sheltered, When Adrian heard that, something inside him shifted. A realization like a sting. All his life, he had built companies, systems, and innovations. Yet he had never built space in his heart for the struggles of the people who served him quietly. He felt ashamed, not because he had failed deliberately, but because he had simply never cared to know. And that realization stayed with him like a shadow as evening approached. The city outside came alive with the usual hum of traffic, but inside the mansion, a different atmosphere filled the air, one of heavy thoughts and dawning empathy. Adrian sat in his study, staring out at the garden, sunlight painting long golden streaks through the glass. He replayed the fragile look in Naira's eyes, the trembling of her small hands scrubbing dishes in the dim dawn light. For a man who owned companies across continents, he suddenly felt powerless. But he wasn't. He realized that compassion was also a power, one he had rarely used. The next morning, when Naira arrived with her mother, she looked nervous, expecting consequences. Instead, Adrian invited her into his office. She stood stiffly, clutching her sweater close, bracing for punishment. But Adrian only smiled gently and handed her something wrapped in soft paper. Inside was a brand new set of school supplies, books, pencils, markers, and even a small pastel-colored lunchbox. Naira stared at it, as if afraid it would vanish. Her lips trembled, and tears welled in her eyes before she could stop them. Adrian wasn't done. He told Samira that her rent had been paid for the full year. He arranged for her and Naira to move to a safer neighborhood. He hired additional help for the mansion so Samira could work shorter shifts. And then, perhaps the most important part, he arranged a scholarship for Naira at a good school near their new home. He insisted she attend full-time and promised she would never again need to wash dishes at dawn to survive. When Samira broke down in grateful sobs, Adrian felt something fill his chest, warmth, purpose, and a strange sense of peace. It was as though his world, once polished but empty, had gained color. Naira, shy but courageous in her own quiet way, stepped forward and placed her tiny hand on Adrian's. It was a simple gesture, but it held more meaning than words. It held trust. It held hope. It held the beginning of a new chapter for all of them. Months passed like turning pages. Naira flourished in school. Samira grew healthier, happier, and stronger. The mansion itself felt lighter, as though kindness had become part of its foundation. And Adrian, once buried in business and solitude, found himself looking forward to their visits, to hearing Naira's school stories, to watching Samira smile without fear. He realized that wealth is measured not by what you own, but by how many lives you lift, and through this journey, he discovered something even deeper. Sometimes the smallest hands can open the biggest hearts. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Touch of Kindness Stories. Your support truly matters. Special request. Before you go, share in the comments what part of this story moved you the most.